is an evolutionary result of needing to know that your brother, your fellow man, has your back in the hunt.
You're listening to the Everyday Legends podcast, the show that is dedicated to helping everyday men build legendary relationships with yourself, your partner, and your world. I'm your host, Mike Campbell, and the aim of this podcast is simple: to help you navigate life with more clarity, more confidence, and purpose-driven action, with plenty of stories, a load of lessons, and some loving straight talk. So let's get started.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Everyday Legends podcast. I am your host, Mike Campbell. I've been away for a couple of weeks on the podcast front. If you listen to this at some point in the future, then you'll have no idea about that. But I've been deep in the hole of launching, creating, getting out the Get Your Shit Together 101 course. So if you're someone who likes to tune in every week, thank you for your patience with me in getting this out. And I've come in today with another solo episode. This comes both off the back of a post that I wrote recently on social media, and also really like all of the work that I do in me and a big part of like how I live my life and a big part of what is in my life, I suppose. So that is, like, in a sentence, the power of being in community with good men. Men need other men to work through their shit with them, to be heard and supported by, to be seen fully by, and to feel safe with, to be challenged, to be held accountable, to be called into integrity, to be called and supported forward into who you are capable of becoming. There is simply no replacing it. Now, there's a lot in this, and I'm going to explore some of it in this episode today, but let me be really clear from the get-go. This is something that men need, which also means that boys need to be introduced to this. We need it modeled to us. We have what it is to be a man. We have masculinity modeled to us. However that forms and eventuates, because we are looking, as we are in our formative years, of how to model ourselves. So I want to put this to you. Have you ever wondered why men banter and give each other shit all the time, without just thinking that's quote unquote boys being boys or men being immature or toxic masculinity, and actually look deeper into it? Why young men are all about throwing shit on each other, guys that they actually love and respect. Now, part of that is maybe some ineffective ways of being, some ineffective and unhealthy shit that we've learned, bullying potentially on some level. But let me offer a different side of that. Accountability, testing each other's strength, learning boundaries by testing, dependability. Will this guy cave when he is tested, when the heat comes on, when shit gets hard? Can I count on him in a storm when things get heavy? Now, a lot of this is in an unconscious eventuation. A lot of it is unconscious because clearly we don't learn this depth of nuance growing up. Again, based on modeling, depending on how we have masculinity, manhood, healthy relationships, healthy strength, healthy testing, healthy accountability, healthy integrity modeled to us. But it is happening. It is happening, at the very least, on an unconscious level. Because of the surface level nature of where the banter tends to stay where the surface level interactions, the jokes, the practical jokes, right? The piling shit on, where that tends to stay, there can be casualties. There are those who can't handle the heat. And so they don't have the support structures or tools in place to let that shit slide off their back or speak up when perhaps it's not appropriate. And of course, there's those who don't know when they've piled on too much heat. In an ideal situation, those same men would be the support, owning when things are taken too far, allowing that man to speak, to be heard, to express what isn't on, to express how that has potentially impacted him, right? To actually clear. Hey, you know what? I need to clear something with you. That shit is not on. And to vent. In an ideal world, the testing that happens most definitely in adolescence as we are learning to be men. And for a lot of men currently, very much into our adulthood, because two things. One, we need to continue that because I need to keep testing the strength and accountability and dependability. And I'm going to elaborate on this in a moment. But also because, unfortunately, everything that I'm sharing speaks to a lot of us haven't outgrown our adolescent ways. But the thing is, we don't explore these nuances of being men, of the masculine need to test the strength of our brothers, which, to go geeky on it, is an evolutionary result of needing to know that your brother, your fellow man, has your back in the hunt. I want you to, for a moment, take yourself back to the vast majority of human evolution. We've been humans for 200,000 years. We've lived in a domesticated agricultural society for about 10,000. Prior to that appearance of Homo sapiens, we had millions of years of our early hominid evolution and slowly forming into a hunter. Now, I've spoken about this in podcasts and many platforms before. Of course, this isn't specifically and exclusively genderized, but by and large, the masculine is the hunter. And by and large, men embody the masculine more so than women, but not exclusively, not at all. And so when your role as a hunter is to provide and protect, hunting is not anything to fuck around with in this context, not the current context. Different story altogether. If you are taking on wild game, it's life or death. You could potentially be injured and or killed, and you don't get anything, and your family, your pack, your tribe, your community, who you are hunting and providing for, goes hungry. Every aspect of the hunt and all of those men / embodiment of the masculine, the hunter, whoever it is, has to be on point, has to be in one team, has to know that that brother there has his back. That if shit gets tough, I can depend on him. If I have to turn my back on an animal as another one is coming to me, I know someone has my back. This is loyalty, by the way. But we don't explore these nuances of being men in our modern manifestation of the masculine. The masculine still needs to test the strength of our brothers. Unfortunately, this element of the hunt and testing, as I'm discussing, has taken on a quite often caricaturized version where all it is banter. All it is putting shit on our mates. And it's lost the effective element of testing, of inviting him into strength, into accountability, into dependability, into integrity, into being solid. And so now we have surface level banter, which has a beautiful part. Hopefully you're getting that. But when we can't go beyond that, when nothing else ever exists, it's shallow and potentially damaging when we don't know how to set boundaries, because that is the kind of interaction that helps us really learn boundaries, to set boundaries, to be strong, to know when enough is enough within ourselves. And so we go out into the world and we don't know that. We don't know how to set it for ourselves or where to end it and set it up for others. So let me ask you this while I'm on the subject. Have you ever wondered why traditionally, historically, I should say, contact sports tend to have higher rates of male participation? Sure, there is likely some very long-standing and completely bullshit equality and gender boxing, let's call it, in there. But I think that accounted for, it is also because it is a natural avenue for healthy outlets of aggression, of competition, and of being tested physically, i.e., the hunt. We still have this need in us, the masculine. Again, this might be speaking to a woman. Aggression is a natural part of the masculine in a healthy way. You can't hunt an animal to kill it, to feed you and your family without having some well-directed aggression, without being competitive, life or death, competition, and being tested physically. And so what happens is a lot of the things that we so eagerly throw shaming and fucking narrow-minded labels like toxic masculinity at are the training ground for mature and healthy masculinity, if done effectively. Toxic masculinity, I understand by most people, well, not most people, some well-intentioned people, speaks to the toxic kinds of behaviors that come under the broader umbrella of masculinity. I believe, unfortunately, it has been taken to mean masculinity equals toxic. And that is fucking up all sorts of people, regardless of gender and everything else that comes into it. Certainly little boys and certainly little girls. We don't allow boys and men to explore these elements of masculinity in a way that encourages healthy learning and testing. And when we don't learn these in healthy and effective ways, and let me be clear, a crucial part of this is in community, is in relationship to other men, especially quote unquote mentors and guides and elders in a sense that can teach us the ways. They eventuate in unhealthy ways. They eventuate in shitty ways, not always. But this is where we see shutting down of emotions, disconnection in relationships. We see anger issues. We see violence. We see abuse. We see the use of the clinging to, the claiming to, the seeking of power over others, dominance, not power for leadership, but power over. That's insecurity. So to the men listening, I invite you to look at where you've had this in your life. Not just healthy outlets for aggression and competition, etc., but of genuine masculine bonding, of testing, of the banter and it being put into context and having real lessons. Because of course, some men don't have any relationships that are on the surface that involve banter and piling shit on. But fundamentally what I'm talking about here is being in relationship, being in community with men who can support you, who can see you, who can hold you accountable, who can challenge you, who can call you into integrity. Where is it missing in your life? Where may you need it? Maybe where you're terrified of it. Because that is speaking to the need for it right there, by the way. Having, your brothers, and I say your brothers, having men see you, like really see who you are, not who you've pretended to be, who you've thought you need to be, who will be accepted by them, who will be respected by them, because respect sits so foundational to the masculine, going back to all that stuff about the hunt. Being truly seen and be safe in that space. I see who you are. I appreciate you, and I choose to call you forward, to hold you accountable, to be who you are capable of being. That is fucking irreplaceable. And we have men everywhere desperate for that. For some men, it looks very obvious. For others, it's different. We fucking shut ourselves off. We bury ourselves in porn, gaming, relationships. It's very fucking surface level relationships. We are seeking something. So the question becomes, well, why don't we? And hopefully you're starting to see that some of this says, well, we learn ways of being a man. We learn that we need to do it all ourselves, to be self-reliant, to don't show weakness. Fucking hell, man. Any kind of indication that you don't have all of your shit all together all the time and you can't handle fucking everything in life is something fundamentally wrong with you. And so there's a lot of shame that comes into this. I'm not strong enough. I'm not capable enough. Perhaps I'm not man enough. I want to hide anything that comes into those umbrellas that I have learned through what it is to be strong and capable, etc. Of course, the irony here is by doing that, I don't become strong enough. I don't become capable enough. I don't become who I can become when I don't allow myself to access those things. When you can allow yourself to be seen, oh, there is potential for you here, brother. We become deeply insecure that any sign that I am not up to scratch will be used against me or simply labeled as me. That's that dude. He's weak. But this is what healthy accountability and loving challenge provide. Being in community with good men provides a safe space to both acknowledge where you might need to step up, where there is room for you to grow, to become stronger. And it has the support to do so where you need it. It has the tests for where you are resting, where you are not showing up, where you are turning a blind eye, where you are burying your head. It provides the environment to accept that you might have done some ineffective shit in the past and you can be better. It says here, let us support you in that and hold you to it. I had a guy on a coaching call recently, and, one of the fundamental foundations for any of the calls and work that I do is that there is safety, there's no judgment, there's empathy, there's support, and there's challenge. And so he was sharing about some infidelity. Now, on a societal level, we would simply shame that guy and judge him and call him a piece of shit. Extrapolate this out to anything, by the way, or many things. And where the fuck would that get him? Living in a shame spiral, which I'm assuming he has been since he did that. Instead, what I offered him was hearing him, sitting with him, letting him sit with it, and then offering him some compassion as to what might have happened for him to lead him to those set of choices. And then mirroring some of his choices back to him with some things to think about and reflect on, and the invitation to work on the mechanisms that led him into that course of action, and also the mechanisms that keep him spinning in the shame cycle and never getting past it. He's no good to fucking anyone if he stays in that cycle. And so he messaged me afterwards and how safe he felt and how welcome he felt and how actually empowered he felt to do some fucking work. That's what this is. But instead, we hide where we aren't up to it, where we aren't up to scratch, or where we feel we aren't. What we have learnt about ourselves, which is to say, which we have learnt to believe about ourselves, isn't up to scratch, isn't strong enough, capable enough, man enough. And among many other things, we simply never truly grow into what and who we are capable of being. It is like this self-perpetuating circle jerk of rationale that makes sense only to keep us safe and comfortable in the devil we know. So let me say this clearly as an invitation and a loving challenge. You cannot get your shit together on an island of your own making. An island might keep you safe, but it prevents the connection to the outside world. Brother, I promise you, support for what you're dealing with is all around you, regardless of the stories and potentially the walls that you might have built up around how no, my shit is just too fucking awful to look at or be seen. Or my shit is different. Or I just need to get through this first, then I can. Getting your shit together before you get into community with good men is like saying I need to get the house clean before the cleaner comes. I need to get fit before I go and see a trainer. Doesn't work that way. Real growth isn't just win after win positivity done in a vacuum of isolation. Real growth invites us into the shit so we can grow past it and be in relationship with people so it has relevance and the kind of appropriate tests it needs. Often as men, we're so fucking keen to try and heal and fix all of our shit in isolation, alone on an island. Your shit has happened in relationship to others, and in part, it needs healing in relationship to others. Others let us know where we're at. And as I've said throughout this, invite us forward, challenge us on shit we aren't seeing, we're not seeing, we're ignoring. And part of what I'm talking about here is friendship, right? Mates, bantering, testing, being able to harness that into a healthy and mature and effective environment and format. And so I want to quote, a mentor of mine, essentially, Francis Weller, in relation to friendship. He says, true friendship is a place of inhabitation where the abandoned parts of who we are invited into being. So I'm going to keep going, but I want to touch on that. The abandoned parts of who we are invited into being. Those parts that you have hidden, that you have kept in the dark, that you have shamed or experienced shame for, that you have judged or feared judgment for or been judged for. True friendship invites those into being. Friendship offers a place for slow revelation. Friendship is a vessel in which the material of our unseen beauty is seen under the watchful gaze of a friend. And what he is saying here, in my interpretation, is that true friendship, true brotherhood, true community with good, strong, mature men of integrity allows all of your amazing self to be seen and invited forward. So therefore you can be who you're capable of being. Now, I have examples and stories of this throughout my own life. Certainly I touched on it very early. My work, my major coaching program, the Everyday Legends Academy, is full of amazing content to understand yourself and step into becoming what I call the everyday legend. And I've spoken about that before clearly on this podcast. But all the content is great. And all the coaching is great too, most definitely. But the community is where the magic happens. The best way I can describe it is it's the one thing that men didn't know they were missing until they get it. And then it's like, oh, where has this been and why have I avoided it? And I can say confidently, through having done this work and it being my work for so long, that the men who go through my work, the one thing, when I ask them, what did you enjoy the most at the end of the program after 6 months? Nearly all, regardless of how much they've enjoyed and got out of the content and enjoyed the coaching and working with me and my coaches, the community, the men around me, man, when we choose it, it chooses us. And in my own life, many strong, powerful men who, if I speak to one example, Javon Langford, a good friend of mine and brother, and we had him earlier on the podcast. Can't remember which episode, but I'll drop it in the show notes. And we ran a big event together with a bunch of other people, but the two of us spearheading it, I suppose. And it was a 2-day event, 3 days, because we actually had a day beforehand for people in the work, let's say. And so after the first day of the public event, it wasn't as smooth as we would have liked. It wasn't as effective, as powerful, as punchy as it could have been. And I was tired. Fuck, was I tired, man. We had been working hard in the months leading up to this. And we had an event, a VIP event that night, and then back to the hotel to debrief and plan for the next day. And we sat, me and Javon and two others, Shira and Rowan. And, Javon chose to share what he had seen. And I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of it because that stuff's, private perhaps for another conversation. But what happened in the next hour, 2 hours really, leading to about 3 a.m, when all I could see was the fucking clock, big red numbers staring at me, was Javon leading, first of all, and sharing direct challenge and accountability, and with that invitation. Here is what I saw and witnessed in you today, and here is where I saw you not show up. And here is my invitation for you for tomorrow. And some sharing that went on through that was powerful. Oh, fuck, was it uncomfortable in the time? Oh, shit, yeah. But it was the medicine that I needed, most certainly. I can only speak from my own experience. And some instantaneous acknowledgement and recognition and knowing. And I went to sleep, had a few hours, I got up the next morning, and I was far more powerful, let's say, the next day. It allowed me to show up how I needed to show up. Again, I could share many examples in there. And then, in my own life, both beyond my own coaching and what I set up in all of my business, I have a group of men that I connect in with every week. Many of them have been on this podcast: Mark Rose, Connor Beaton, Trevor Bowen, Jeremy Goldberg, Sylvester McNutt III, Dan Harrison, these men, and a few more. And we talk every week, and there's community. We discuss certain topics, and then we share if someone needs to be heard, and he is heard, and he is loved on, and he is supported, and he is held accountable, and he is called on his shit with love, with empathy, always with respect. There is so much power in it when safety is involved. So I want to really fucking ram this point home. Men need other men to hold them accountable, to work through their shit, to be heard, to be seen, to be supported by, to be challenged and held accountable, and to called into integrity, into who they can become. So let me close this by saying to you listening, as perhaps a clear example of this at play, this, please, I invite you to make this a call to action. for the men who like my content, consume my work, but maybe get a bit terrified at the idea of actually working with me or something of this nature. You know, you would love to get your shit together to feel better, to feel grounded, really grounded and solid within yourself, like a sense of inner peace. You are okay, at home, at ease within yourself. Or maybe you want to connect more with your partner on a deeper level, create more intimacy, lead and create a strong, powerful partnership. Maybe you want to learn how to navigate conflict, turn that into connection, or simply relate better. Maybe you want to create a relationship that lasts instead of the same kind of patterns that keep ending. Or maybe for you, you simply know that there is more in you and in life for you, but you have reached a limit of knowing exactly what that is or how to get it. There is something for you is the key here. And you follow me, you consume some of my stuff, you nod along, fuck yeah, Mike, you tap like, you tap share maybe, you write the odd comment maybe, you lurk. You do those really easy and inactive things. Yes, this is me calling you forward. And this is what happens in this work, in this environment, and what I'm talking about. Calling forward is different to being called out. Let me call you forward. You want something for yourself better. But when the rubber hits the road, when something pops up that is a solid option, doesn't have to be perfect. That's a whole set of shit right there. Support, guidance, challenge, accountability, community of safety and pragmatic men getting shit done. Yet my language challenges you too much. Maybe how I am, perhaps you think I'm blunt, or maybe too truthful and honest, or maybe I'm strong enough that I will hold you to your shit. Like it makes you feel that working with me would be uncomfortable, or working with me and being seen, challenged, and held accountable terrify you into all sorts of rationalizations. Then, brother, that is some of the work you need. That is something you need to work on. It will be uncomfortable. Growth must be to actually be growth. But I can assure you, I can only speak for myself, will be the safest pair of hands you have ever stepped into if you step. My community will be the safest community you have stepped into if you step. If you are challenged, I want you to really connect to this. If you are challenged by a man of or men of solid integrity to the point that you never go towards that kind of honesty and challenge and accountability and the growth that it carries, then I offer you that is a flaming red sign telling you that you actually need what that has. You need that level of being seen. Not just because there is likely a bunch of shit there to learn about yourself and within yourself via a loving mirror being held up for you, but in order to get the medicine you need that it has for you, learning that level of integrity and dependability, of loving strength. It also suggests, I suspect, that you've never had it before. We spoke earlier about modeling. I suspect that means that you haven't had a strong reference point for healthy, effective, mature masculinity, for growth and what integrity looks like in a man that can be both challenging and compassionate as fuck, safe and strong. Therefore, it is likely some of the very teaching you need beyond anything that you think you want to work on. I invite you to reflect on, at the very least, I suspect that is something that you need. To be seen and held in safety and called to integrity by strong, good men. Because running from that, both will see you run from it forever and never be it. If you want that kind of integrity, the kind of strength, the kind of presence where you feel solid so deep within you that it's as if it is in your bones, you have to jump into the fire to forge it. Or perhaps the fire isn't the analogy. Perhaps it's the adage, or maybe the cliche now, that iron sharpens iron. If you want that level of what I like to call legendary integrity and grounded maturity that sees you feel solid and clear within yourself, then you need to be in the presence of it, at the very least, to have it modeled to you, let alone everything else it has for you. That shit you cannot learn in a book or listening to a podcast. Very aware that this is a podcast. You can consume information on it. You can learn some of it intellectually, but to truly learn it, for it to become wisdom, you must embody it. That needs men to support you, to hold you, to challenge you, and continually call you forward into who you can be and who they see you are capable of being. Actually, more than that, that they need you to be for their own survival and for their lives to thrive, for the community around them and around you. Now, it might feel like a bridge too far right now, and I'm aware of that, but I want to touch on it. It might feel like a bridge too far to think that you have a responsibility to your community or that you can make a difference in it. But I can assure you, once you start this work and really venture along the road of stepping into true, mature, healthy masculinity, as Francis Weller says, at some point we have to shift from searching for belonging, which a lot of self-improvement work is often about or around. We have to shift from searching for belonging to being a place of welcome, a place for others to feel safe, to know that they belong, to thrive. And we want that for the people around us. We want them to feel safe, to feel loved, so that they can be themselves in the world, right? Well, if you can't be that for yourself, that's where to fucking start. And that's what good men around you will provide and call you into. If that is to ever happen, for you to be that place of welcome, it must start with stepping into that and learning the lessons and getting the medicine that being in community with other good men has for you. Yeah. You might be nodding at this or not. You might be feeling uncomfortable. Or you might have already turned off, which of course means you're not listening to this, in which case I really fucking hope you turn back on to hear this point. This is a pattern I see in a lot of men who are seeking answers, who are wanting more for themselves, who want to move from whatever discomfort, frustration, or limitation they are currently in to whatever is beyond that and available to them. They sit and wait for opportunity to present itself. They have a bunch of rationalizations around the waiting and the inaction and the perfection and the timing. They wait for the opportunity to get their shit together, to finally stop the frustrating patterns of inaction and sabotage, the opportunity to grow into a solid and grounded strength, to actually step into what's possible for them. And then when opportunity knocks, they just pretend like they don't hear it, or they rationalize their way out of it because the knock makes them uncomfortable. Well, this might be your knock. Ignoring the knock of opportunity is the fastest way to keep creating your own prison. I see so many men wanting more, convincing themselves in the world that they are ready for more. But when more turns up and says, "Hi, I'm here," but you have to outgrow some old shit that you have become very comfortable with, they turn away from it. And they say, you know what? It's funny, but I'm just not able to take that opportunity for more right now because this and that and fucking and all this shit. I'm going, to place in the way so I actually get to stay comfortable in my safe level of suffering. Waiting for the stars to align to some seemingly impossible geometric orbit in order for yourself to allow yourself to actually then answer the call of opportunity is a self-perpetuating cycle of self-denial. It will lead nowhere, and you know this. Well, certainly it will lead nowhere new. But I put it to you, having good men in your corner, men who will hold you to who you are and who you are capable of being and who you choose and commit to being, will ensure that you don't keep ignoring the knock. So here is my invitation to the men still listening who haven't yet challenged their belief of improvement on an isolated island, or have wanted it but not stepped into it yet. This is opportunity knocking. I am soon opening the doors for spots in the next intake of the Everyday Legends Academy, a virtual group program, a community of like-minded men across the globe, based in safety, confidentiality, and zero judgment, where we can pragmatically get to work and understanding yourself, who you are, who you want to be, and actually becoming that man. This is your opportunity to reach out to me. Email me, go to the links below on my website, book a call, act now. See what strong, safe men, safe community has available for you. Do not make this another thing that you consume, like the idea of, and never do anything with. And you might want to listen back to this now that you've heard it and listen for the invitation, listen for the challenge. And hopefully what you can also hear in there is the respect. I speak this out of respect. I give you the benefit of the doubt that you can handle some truth, because you can. If truth hurts, it's because there is some dead wood to be cut away. Avoiding it will not do it. Stepping into an environment where you can lovingly address it, look at it, have it seen, have it welcomed and accepted, and then grow beyond it, that is what this work, that is what being in community with good men is about. And that is today's podcast. I trust this lands with you. If you are listening to this essentially on behalf of another man in your life, then I encourage you to share it with him, invite him to listen with an open mind. If he can't, doesn't, or won't, then maybe he's not in that place yet, and that's okay too. If this has really landed for you, then I invite you to do something with it. Make sure you hang around, subscribe to the podcast, consume all of my free content, but please put that shit into action so you can be that man and build that legendary integrity. See you next time.
You've been listening to the Everyday Legends podcast, the show dedicated to helping everyday men build legendary relationships with yourself, with your partners, and in your world. If you have got something from this podcast, please share it with someone that you think could benefit from it. And please visit your home for podcasts. Like us, subscribe to us, leave us a review. Your feedback is phenomenal in getting this in front of more eyes and ears. Until next time, I'm Mike Campbell, and remember to build that legendary integrity.